Have you ever noticed how the older you get, the less people really listen? They nod, they smile, they change the subject, but deep down, you can tell they're not ready for the truth you carry. And so, you begin to hold it in. Not because your voice has grown weak, but because your silence has grown wise. Because what you've learned over 60 years could rewrite their entire way of living. But most people don't want clarity. They want comfort. It's like an old lighthouse standing on a cliff, ignored on sunny days when the seas are calm. But the moment the storm hits, the moment the sky turns black and the waves rise, everyone looks toward the light they once overlooked. Or think of a worn leather journal tucked away in a drawer, dusty, quiet, forgotten. Until one day, someone opens it and finds truths too raw for the surface world. Because while they're busy chasing noise, you've come to understand something they haven't. Some truths aren't meant to be shared, not because they're not real, but because they're too real. And when you protect your peace by protecting your voice, you stop arguing and start observing. So what are the 7 truths you must stay silent about, especially after 60? The kind that sting when spoken. The kind that wake people up, even if they pretend to be asleep. Stay with me till the end, because the last one may be the one you've carried for decades, but never dared to say aloud. Let's begin. Number 1, most people don't want your advice. They want validation. Let's talk about one of the most quietly painful realizations that often comes with age. You carry decades of wisdom, but people don't really want to hear it. At some point in life, you begin to notice that when you speak from experience, when you offer guidance based on what you've lived through, many people don't respond with gratitude or reflection. They respond with distance, discomfort, or defensiveness. You're not offering judgment, only truth. But still, they pull away. Why? Because most people don't want advice. They want to be told they're already right. Here's the truth. At a certain age, you've earned your insight the hard way. You've seen things fall apart. You've made mistakes, lost people, built yourself back up. You've lived through heartbreak, recession, betrayal, disappointment, things that younger people are still walking into for the first time. And naturally, you want to help. You want to say, be careful with this, or think twice before doing that. Not because you're trying to control anyone, but because you know how it ends. And yet, you're met with eye rolls, resistance, or polite nods that go nowhere. Because what they're really seeking isn't perspective, it's permission. They want affirmation, not insight. And this is where Stoic wisdom becomes vital. Marcus Aurelius said, "Do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about others. It is not your task." That quote isn't about being cold. It's about understanding the limits of your responsibility. You are not here to convince people who are not ready. You're not here to bend yourself trying to save those who would rather sink than accept a hand. If your wisdom is not welcome, then your silence becomes more powerful than your speech. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him Greg, spent most of his life running a small business. He learned through trial and error, through bad deals and long nights. When his nephew started a similar business in his 30s, Greg offered some advice. Nothing harsh, just a few gentle warnings about cash flow, trust, and timing. But instead of gratitude, his nephew pushed back, said things like, "Times are different now," and "That may have been true for your generation." So Greg stepped back. He said nothing. A year later, the business collapsed under the same mistakes Greg had warned him about. So what do you do when your truth isn't wanted? You stay silent, not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom. You speak only where your voice has weight. You understand that silence isn't weakness, it's restraint. And you remember, your wisdom isn't wasted just because it wasn't received. It still lives within you. It still matters. You don't have to shout the truth to prove it's true, because at the end of the day, silence isn't surrender, it's strength. And your peace is too valuable to trade for someone else's approval. Number 2. Your health is mostly in your own hands, but no one wants to hear it. Let's talk about one of the hardest truths to say out loud, and one of the most resented when it's said. Your health, especially after 60, is not just fate, not just genetics. It's largely in your own hands. But try saying that in a room full of people complaining about chronic pain, fatigue, or disease, and you'll see their faces shift. They don't want this truth, because it points inward, because it asks, what are you doing every single day to either heal or harm yourself? And when the answer isn't easy or flattering, they'd rather pretend the question doesn't exist. Here's the uncomfortable reality. What you eat, how much you move, whether you sleep enough, whether you drink too much. These aren't small things. They are massive contributors to how your body feels and functions. But modern culture, especially among older generations, has taught us to separate health from responsibility, to hand it over to doctors, pills, or fate. And the moment someone says, maybe try walking more, or maybe cut out the sugar, it sounds like blame. But it's not blame. It's power. It's saying, you still have a say in this. You're not helpless, unless you choose to be. Let me tell you about a woman named Carol. She's 71. For years, she struggled with back pain, poor sleep, and constant fatigue. Her doctor kept adjusting medications, but nothing changed. One day, her grandson, just 12 years old, asked her, "Grandma, do you ever move around? Or just sit all day?" It wasn't said cruelly. It was curiosity. But it stuck. She realized she hadn't gone for a real walk in years. She hadn't stood up for more than 10 minutes at a time unless it was absolutely necessary. That night, instead of scrolling or watching TV, she walked around her living room for 15 minutes. That turned into a habit. That habit turned into better sleep, less stiffness, brighter mood, all from one brutally honest question and the courage to face it. Stoicism teaches us this simple idea. The body should be treated more rigorously, that it may not be disobedient to the mind. Seneca. You are not separate from your body. It reflects your discipline, your habits, your self-respect. And yet, when you bring this up, when you say gently, "You have more control than you think," people recoil. Because control comes with responsibility, and not everyone is ready to claim that. So stay silent? Sometimes, yes. Not because the truth isn't valuable, but because it must be wanted. And if someone isn't ready to hear that they're shaping their own suffering, your words will only harden their denial. You can model the truth, live it, show it, but save your breath for those who are ready to listen. Number 3, you're not as needed as you once were. Let's talk about something most people over 60 feel, but almost no one admits. You're not as needed as you once were. You used to be the one people called first, the one who gave the advice, fixed the problems, held the family together. But now, the phone rings less. Decisions happen without your input. Conversations move on without pausing for your opinion. It's not disrespect, it's time. Life has moved. People have grown. And whether it's your adult children, your former co-workers, or even your spouse, they no longer orbit around you the way they once did. And here's the hard truth. Clinging to your old sense of importance only leads to resentment. It starts small, feeling ignored, passed over, forgotten. But left unchecked, it grows into bitterness. You start viewing younger people not as free, evolving humans, but as ungrateful. You start keeping score. They wouldn't be here if it weren't for me. And while that may be true, life doesn't pay interest on past contributions. The world keeps spinning, and your choice is simple. Either adapt with it, or be crushed by the illusion that you should still be at the center. That's why Marcus Aurelius said, "Adapt yourself to the life you have been given, and truly love the people with whom destiny has surrounded you." This isn't surrender, it's wisdom. It's recognizing that relevance is not owed. And love, real love, isn't measured by how much people need you. It's measured by how gracefully you support them as they no longer do. Let me tell you about someone I know. His name's Alan. He was a father of 4, ran a construction company for 30 years, and there wasn't a single decision made in his house that didn't go through him first. But now he's 72. His kids are grown, his business is sold, and most days the decisions happen without him. At first, he fought it, gave advice even when it wasn't asked for, got upset when his kids didn't follow it. But one day, his daughter quietly said, "Dad, we're not ignoring you. We're just trying to be our own people." And that's when it hit him. He had spent decades building a family, not so they'd orbit him forever, but so they could stand on their own. So, how do you handle this shift? First, stop measuring your worth by how needed you are. Second, embrace your new role, not as the center of attention, but as the quiet foundation beneath it all. And finally, remember, your wisdom is a gift, not a demand. Offer it when asked, and trust that the people who matter will still feel your presence, even if they no longer require your direction. Because in the end, being needed fades, but being loved, that stays if you let it. If you found this valuable, hit like and subscribe for more powerful insights. Number 4, the hardest part of aging isn't the body. It's feeling invisible. Let's talk about something most people don't admit out loud: how the world starts to look through you instead of at you. The hardest part of aging isn't the body, it's feeling invisible. You walk into a room and no one turns. You share an idea and it's brushed aside. You speak and the younger ones nod politely, but they've already decided your time has passed. And slowly, the world stops seeing you as a central figure and starts treating you like background. But here's what's even harder. You still feel just as alive inside. Your mind is sharp. Your memories are rich. You still have thoughts that matter, emotions that stir, opinions that form. You didn't become less human. You just became less noticed. And it's not vanity that aches. It's the quiet loss of relevance. It's watching your own story continue while others act as if it's already closed. Marcus Aurelius said, "Withdraw into yourself. Your mind is your kingdom." That wasn't a retreat. That was a reminder. Your worth is never determined by the spotlight. In fact, the moment you stop chasing validation from the outside, you gain power from within. Feeling invisible is painful, but sometimes it's also peaceful, because in that silence, you rediscover who you are without applause. Let me tell you about someone. His name's Richard. He's 72. Once a regional manager at a company where people sought his opinion daily. Now, retired, he goes days without anyone asking what he thinks. One day at a family dinner, he offered a thought on politics, something he used to debate with brilliance. But his grandson interrupted, chuckling, "That's outdated thinking, Grandpa." Richard smiled, but something inside him folded. That night, he sat on his porch alone. No one had meant harm, but he felt erased. So he started journaling, not for others, just for himself. Every night, he wrote 3 things he observed, 3 he felt, and 1 lesson from the day. It was his way of proving to himself, "I still see, I still feel, I still matter." That small ritual reminded him that the world's gaze doesn't define his presence. So how do you hold your light when the world dims its attention? First, stop measuring your value by recognition. Second, invest in inner strength, books, reflection, creating. And third, speak up, not to demand attention, but to honor your truth. Even if no one asks, say what matters. Your voice still carries weight, even in silence. Because at the end of the day, you may feel invisible to others, but you must never go unseen by yourself. Your life is still happening, and you are still here, bright, wise, and worthy of being seen. Number 5. Some children just grow up to be strangers. Let's talk about one of the most painful truths no one wants to admit. Some children just grow up to be strangers. You gave them everything. You stayed up at night when they were sick, worked long hours to keep the lights on, went without so they wouldn't have to. And for a time, you were their whole world. But somewhere along the way, things changed. They grew up, pulled away, and now they call when they need something, or not at all. The hardest part isn't the silence, it's what that silence implies. That somewhere you became optional, that your love became assumed, that your presence became background. You scroll through old photos and wonder, where did that child go? The one who used to run to me just to show me a drawing. They're still alive, but they feel gone. Not out of rebellion, not out of anger, just disconnection. And it hurts in a way that's hard to describe. But here's the Stoic truth. Expect everything, attach to nothing. Epictetus wasn't telling us to be cold, he was telling us to be free. Because when your peace is tied to someone else's closeness, you are forever at the mercy of their distance. Love them, yes. Miss them, of course. But don't lose yourself in the ache. Not every child becomes the adult you hoped for. And that doesn't mean you failed. It means they chose their path, and you must walk yours. Let me tell you about someone. Her name is Linda. She's 68, a retired teacher, mother of 2. Her daughter moved across the country and calls once a month, always in a rush. Her son only visits when he needs help with bills. On Mother's Day last year, she waited by the phone. No one called, no flowers, just silence. She made herself tea, sat by the window, and cried. Not because she was forgotten, but because she finally accepted that her role had changed. And that night, she made a quiet vow to stop measuring her worth by who called and start measuring it by how well she cared for herself. So, how do you handle this? First, stop blaming yourself. You did your part. Second, release the fantasy of how things should be. And third, pour love into the people who show up, even if they're not the ones you raised. Friends, neighbors, even strangers at the park. Life will always offer new hands to hold, but only if you're willing to reach out. At the end of the day, Some children may become strangers, but you don't have to become bitter. Let go, not to lose them, but to find yourself again. If you've watched the video this far, don't forget to leave a comment with a thank God and give it a like if you enjoyed the content. Your support means a lot and motivates me to keep creating more interesting videos. I hope you find inspiration in them and that we continue learning together. Thank you for your support. Number 6. Time speeds up when regret builds up. Let's talk about something few people over 60 say out loud, because they don't want to be pitied, judged, or interrupted. It's this: time doesn't just move quickly. It accelerates when regret is sitting in the passenger seat. The years blur. Decades feel like chapters you meant to go back and rewrite. And all those what-ifs start knocking louder. At night, during walks, in the pauses between conversation. You wonder if you chose the right career, if you were too hard on your children, if you stayed too long in a love that never gave back. But instead of saying it, you keep it in. Because every time you try to speak about it, people say, "Don't think like that." Or worse, they change the subject entirely. And so the regrets pile up quietly, not like loud storms, but like dust, settling slowly on every memory. The dinner you didn't attend, the apology you never gave, the chance you were too scared to take. You carry them like invisible weight, and the world never asks if you're tired. But here's what Stoic philosophy reminds us: the past is beyond reach. Use the present wisely. Seneca wasn't saying forget the past. He was saying, don't let it steal today, because that's what regret does. It tricks you into believing the future is already written, when in reality, every day is still yours to shape. Every morning is still a page. Let me tell you about a man named Walter. He's 72 now, divorced, lives alone. He told me once that his biggest regret wasn't a missed opportunity or a lost love. It was staying silent when it mattered, not standing up for himself in his 40s, not expressing his dreams in his 50s. By the time he found the courage to speak, too many people had stopped listening. So now he writes letters he never sends, not for others, but for himself, to finally speak, to finally let it out. So how do you carry regret without letting it bury you? First, accept that regret is a teacher, not a life sentence. Second, stop looking back with a magnifying glass and start looking forward with intention. And finally, forgive yourself for what you didn't know back then. You were doing the best you could with what you had. At the end of the day, you can't outrun regret. But you can outgrow it. You can look it in the eye and say, thank you for the lesson. And then you can return to the present, the only place where peace is possible and the only place where time begins to slow again. Number 7, you begin to understand what actually matters, and it's too simple for most. There's a quiet shift that happens after 60, an awakening so subtle most people miss it. It's the realization that what truly matters is simple, not flashy, not loud, not what you once chased, just peace, kindness, simplicity, a morning with no urgency, a conversation with depth, a walk without checking your phone. And when you try to share this revelation, you're met with blank stares. People nod, but they're not really listening, because most are still chasing something. They just don't know what. You want to tell them that the cars, the titles, the online arguments, none of it brings peace. You want to say that impressing others doesn't quiet the mind, that the best parts of life are often the least productive ones, watching the rain, holding a hand, cooking something slowly. But you hold your tongue, not because you're bitter, but because you've learned this: Some truths can only be understood through time, and until someone is ready, they won't hear you. Here's the insight from Epictetus. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. It's not that ambition is wrong, it's just that without inner calm, it becomes a treadmill. No finish line, just motion, just noise. The world tells people to do more, be more, own more. And you now can finally see through the illusion. You see that peace isn't found in adding, but in subtracting. Let me tell you about someone I know. Her name is Susan. She's 68, used to run a marketing firm, retired early, sold everything, moved to a smaller town. Her kids thought she was giving up. Her friends said she'd get bored. But she told me the other day, "For the first time in my life, I'm not busy. I'm full." She gardens, she volunteers, she has no schedule, but her days are rich. And when people ask what changed, she smiles and says, "I stopped chasing things that didn't matter." So how do you live with this clarity in a world addicted to more? First, don't expect applause. Simplicity threatens people who measure worth in complexity. Second, protect your peace like a treasure. It took you decades to find. And lastly, live your truth quietly. Let your life be the lesson, not your words. If you believe this video can help others, give it a like. It helps the YouTube algorithm show it to more people. And don't forget to subscribe for more awesome content coming your way. Share your thoughts in the comments. I will definitely reply.